Hi everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm reviewing an ink from Diamine. It's one of their recent releases. It is Aurora Borealis. Now this ink was the second ink that Diamine have collaborated with the Reddit community to decide on the colour. This was released I think in late 2018 and yes, it's a beautiful sort of emerald teal, dark tealy sort of green. I have it here in the little 30ml bottle, which I got from Fountain Fader in Germany. They provided really great service, and a little shout out to them, so thank you very much. The bottle here actually says this ink colour was chosen by the members of a wonderful Reddit community of fountain pen enthusiasts. If you aren't part of the community, join in, and it gives you the website. So check that out if you're interested. Really interesting ink. As I said, it comes in this little 30ml bottle. Also comes in the larger 80ml bottle, which I don't have, but this is what that bottle looks like. So it's that sort of standard glass bottle. The opening on the glass bottle, the 80ml, is a bit better than the opening on the 30ml. The 30ml is restrictive in terms of what pens can fill from it, so depending on the pen you have, you might need to use syringe to fill from this bottle. But if we look at it here on the cardstock again, you can see it's a lovely sort of dark tealy colour. It's got some nice sort of red shading and some nice sort of light shading that comes through as well. Let's look at it on Rhodia while we're right here. Here is the Rhodia page. So firstly, you can see there's a nice amount of sheen that comes through on this paper. This is good paper for fountain pen ink, so you know it is going to show off the ink nicely. As I said, it's the second ink from Diamine, so, in association with the online Reddit community. The colour is a lot like Emerald of Chivor, just without the glitter shimmery sort of effect as well. So you still get that red sheen and that dark green emerald colour, which is quite nice. In the broad TWSBI Eco, which I have it in here, it's a nice rich saturated ink, but not overly wet, but it's a really nice colour. I also had it here in a Lamy Safari with a fine nib, and the Lamy Safari was interesting. When you get some nice sort of saturation, it's quite nice, but you can see there's some little, and this might be the pen, but I think it's sort of probably also to do with the quality of the ink being not particularly wet, and the Lamy fine nib not being particularly wet, that you do get some sort of interesting flow issues, I think. But it's a nice shading, there's a bit of sheen, it's a good quality ink. Let's look at a couple of ink comparisons that I have here on this page. And before we do the water sample test, I'll show you on some other paper. So it's an interesting sort of emeraldy green colour. That is Emerald of Chivor next to it without the glitter in it. I also have Robert Oster Peppermint, Monteverde California Teal, and then of course the Heban Emerald of Chivor, which has the glitter in it. I'm not sure how well that's going to be picked up on the camera, but that has. And then K2Z Menthol Green, it's a little bit bluer perhaps than the Aurora Borealis there. Now Aurora Borealis is I find it to be a really interesting ink. It's got some really lovely rich dark qualities in it, but when you do get the lighter shading, it's almost washed out. It's a really interesting ink. It shades so heavily. I wonder about Diamine at the moment. They have this big preference for really saturated inks. Think of things like some of the German exclusives like Purple Rain and Skull and Roses and that sort of colour. They are rich, dark colours, full of sheen, but I think sometimes that leads to sort of flow issues, or they're not overly wet inks. So something to be sort of aware of with those inks. Let's put some water down on the page now on this water sample, and then we'll leave it there for a second while I show you on some other paper. So that's a good amount of water there. Let's see what that does to the ink. Now let's look at it from the bottom up. We'll start with the regular student notepad here. You can see there that it performs relatively well. There's no real feathering or anything like that. There's a tiny little bit occasionally, but not too bad. The Lamy Fine looks nice on this page. And if we look at the reverse, you'll see that there's actually very little bleed. Really only from the TWSBI Broad, and it's not much at all. A bit of show through, but that's pretty thin paper. It's not fountain pen friendly paper at all. Here we have it on regular copy paper, and it actually does perform very well here. There's very little feathering at all. It sort of holds together quite nicely. It's not because it's not particularly wet ink, it doesn't absorb into the paper too much, which is why we get sheen. And then, as you can see, very little in terms of bleed through or anything like that. Now let's look at it on Tomorrow River. This is where it sort of gets a bit interesting. It does look slightly more washed out on this paper. It is normal, some inks do, but you know, there's no feathering, there's no bleed. It's really well behaved, but not a huge amount of sheen from the writing. You really only get a huge amount of sheen from the you know, when you put a swatch down or something like that, like we get on the color card here. You can see there's a nice sort of that rich red dark sheen. Let's dry up this water test and we'll have a quick look at it. Okay, so as you can see, it takes up a lot of the ink. There's a little bit of a grey sort of a colour left behind, but not really a lot. You can see there on the paper towel we get nice sort of light blues and some sort of darker tealy sort of greens, but yeah, not terribly much is left behind. So I would say that the water resistance of this ink is fairly low, which I'll write there on the criteria there. So now let's talk through these criteria. So sheen, yes, there's some, particularly when you do like a big swatch. It's a nice sort of rich dark red sheen. Shading is excellent. Let's just once again look at this ink up close, this writing up close. You can see from the TWSBI Broad there, you get a lovely amount of shading, and then from the Lamy Fine, you do get some shading. It just doesn't necessarily always lay down sort of particularly wet line. Shimmer, there is none. This is a straight ink in that respect. Saturation is what I would say good to excellent. In the darker shading, it's beautiful. In the lighter shading, it's a bit washed out, but it's still fair. Wetness and flow is fair. It's not a wet ink. Water resistance is low. Dry time is 25 to 30 seconds on Rhodia, which is sort of probably in the realm of normal. Feathering, there's none. Even like as we said on the lowest quality paper here with the TWSBI Broad, which isn't an overly wet pen, but it's certainly not a dry pen. You know, there's very little feathering whatsoever. So a little bit on the eye there. You can see a few little spots occasionally, but not really enough to say that this ink feathers badly. Bleed, none to low. Once again, only on the lowest end paper. Value. Okay, so this ink is really great value. Depending on where you get it from, you're going to be paying, you know, sort of the standard Diamine price, which is really reasonable. So, you know, every retailer is going to have probably a slightly different price, or every country is going to have a slightly different price. So check it out on your at your local retailer. Check it out online and see what deals you can get in terms of, you know, sort of VAT and all of those sorts of general expenses, you know, like pricing conditions that, you know, are around the place. But I think the value is really good. Diamine inks are pretty well priced. They cost a little more in Australia than I would like. You know, sort of, you know, a sort of 80ml bottle costing $25 to $30, that sort of price. The smaller bottles here, when you buy them online, like I think this costs about €3, which, or €3.40 or something like that. So pretty well priced. You're going to pay a little bit more in other countries, but if you can get it from the UK or from parts of Europe, you know, when you remove the VAT and all of those sorts of things, it's a really, really good deal. So, in terms of scoring, my personal score of this ink is 4.5 out of 5. I really like it. I think it's a really high quality ink. I think it's nice to write with. It's a great color. It's right in my color range that I like. I think of things like another ink I could have put here was Robert Oster Tranquility, for instance, or even Colorverse Gravity Wave. They're in this sort of dark tealy, dark turquoise green emerald sort of color. It's a really lovely color. It's not green. Like if you look at the California Teal there or the Robert Oster Peppermint, they are sort of more green. So this has a bit more sort of teal to what I would say. Overall, I think it's a good ink, 4 out of 5 in terms of the performance and my personal taste. This is an ink I would definitely recommend. I think this is better than Earl Grey in a lot of ways from the Reddit community. I think this has a bit more interest in it. And Earl Grey was a nice grey, but it had these sort of tinges of purple, which was quite nice. But I think this is a better ink. I would like to see the next Diamine inks be more, well, not concentrate so much on the sheen of the inks, but things like the flow and saturation, things like that. The new, for instance, the Gibson Les Paul colours, the guitar ones, I think are really great. The blue there is beautiful. You know, so some more vibrant colours in that sort of style of ink would be great. But this was Diamine Aurora Borealis, and I think it's a beautiful ink. It's got a nice bit of sheen on it, if that's your thing. beautiful shading, which is my thing, and just a generally really nice color. So if this is in your the color family that you enjoy, check it out. You know, and also look at some of the other recent inks, you know, the German exclusives and things like that. Once again, quick shout out to Fountain Fader there in Germany. Lovely company to buy from. Quick service, great, you know, sort of postage rates, all that sort of stuff. So check them out, check out the inks, and I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notifications button if you want to stay up to date with the videos that I produce. Please feel free to get in touch using any of the platforms listed below. You can find me on Instagram or Twitter at @the_offstage_me. Please feel free to get in touch there or on any of the platforms, as I said. Let me know if there are products you think I should be looking at, or if there are new things on the market that you think I should be checking out. Or if there's a way you'd like to support the channel, please get in touch and let's see what we can do. In the meantime, enjoy your pens and your ink, and I'll talk to you later.